On July 16th, 2026, a Beijing lab shipped something almost nobody expected this soon. An open model at the frontier in the 3 trillion parameter class. I'm Guerin Green. This is the K3 Dossier, novel cognitions read on Kimi K3, and on the one thing it does better than any closed model I run, Kimi K3. 2.8 trillion parameters, open weights, and a real claim to frontier status. But the headline for us was never the leaderboard. It's what a genuinely independent model from a different lab, built a different way, can do to your best work before it ships. So let me start with what this thing actually is and then get to why it changed our build loop. Kimi K3 is a mixture of experts model from Moonshot AI. 2.8 trillion total parameters, but only about 50 billion are active on any given token, because it routes each one to 16 of 896 experts. It ships with a 1 million token context window, native vision, and reasoning that's always on. The API went live the day it launched. The open weights land July 27th. Now, Moonshot is refreshingly honest here. Overall, K3 still trails the strongest closed systems, Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Sol. But it reaches genuine frontier level, beats every other model tested, and on several coding benchmarks it leads outright. For an open model, that is the story of the year. So how does it pull that off? 2 architectural bets carry the frontier claim. The first is Kimi Delta Attention, a hybrid linear attention scheme that replaces the expensive quadratic attention in a chunk of the layers. That's how you make a million token window affordable without gutting expressiveness. The second is attention residuals. Instead of every layer just passing its output forward, a layer can reach back and pull representations from any earlier layer, which is genuinely useful when different experts fire at different depths. Together, Moonshot reports about 2.5 times the scaling efficiency of the older K2. And here's the detail that makes a model this size economically real. K3 is trained quantization aware in 4-bit MXFP4 from the fine-tuning stage onward. It learned to live in 4 bits, so the quality loss is far smaller than post-hoc compression would cost, and the whole model collapses to roughly 1.4 terabytes instead of 5.6. Hold on to that number, it matters later. So it's fast, it's cheap, and it's open. But honestly, none of that is why we reach for it. The real reason is a workflow, using K3 not as a replacement, but as an adversary. Here's the problem it solves. Ask any model to review its own work and you get a confident pass. Ask a model from the same family, Opus checking Opus, or a smaller Claude checking a bigger one, and you get a better pass, but you inherit the exact same blind spots. Shared training data, shared architecture, shared failure modes. And this is the key insight. The errors a training lineage is systematically prone to are precisely the ones its own relatives are worst at catching. Effective red teaming doesn't need a smarter reviewer. It needs one that fails differently. And Kimi K3 is about as different from Claude as a frontier model gets. Different lab, different attention stack, different sparsity regime, different data recipe. That orthogonality is the entire point. When K3 reviews Opus 4.8's output, it brings a genuinely independent prior, and in our testing, it consistently flags unstated assumptions, edge cases, and security gaps that Opus grading its own homework waved right through. Being open weight adds a second edge that people underrate. Closed frontier models carry a usage policy layer that refuses a whole class of hard prompts, and red teaming lives in exactly that class. Moonshot's own notes record prompts that Fable 5 declined on policy grounds, getting automatically failed over to Opus. A model with no refusal layer will actually engage the adversarial prompt instead of walling it off. And with that 1 million token window, K3 can hold the whole diff, the surrounding repository, and Opus's rationale all at once, then attack the entire thing coherently. But is it capable enough to find real problems? Let's look at the board. These are Moonshot's own numbers. K3 at maximum reasoning effort, measured against Fable 5, GPT 5.6 Sol, and Opus 4.8. Bold marks the leader in each row. The 2 results that matter most to me are wins, not near misses. K3 TOPS program bench at 77.8, and SWE Marathon at 42, and both of those measure sustained long horizon coding, staying coherent across a big repository over many steps, rather than one-shot puzzle solving. That is exactly what a million token context and long session stamina predict. It also leads the agentic search pair, Browse Comp and Deep Search QA at 95. So where does it fall short? And there are real gaps. Fable 5 pulls ahead on Frontier SWE, and the reasoning heavy HLE. GPT 5.6 Sol takes DPSWE, Terminal Bench, GPQA, and the Vision Test. If you're shopping for a single, do everything flagship, those gaps are genuine, and you should weigh them honestly. But for how we actually use K3 as an adversarial reviewer opus, they barely register. A red teamer needs independence and enough horsepower to find genuine problems. It does not need to sit at the top of every leaderboard. K3 clears that bar with room to spare, and it turns out we're not the only ones who noticed. The hidden stature of Mastermind is integrating K3 as a top-line frontier model, a first-class option members reach for by default, not a curiosity they try once. It runs on a simple thesis. Durable advantage in AI work comes from method and model diversity, not from betting the whole shop on one vendor. And K3 slots into 4 roles. 1. Adversarial review, the author then refute loop we just walked through, run as a standing discipline. 2. Long horizon repository work, where that million token window handles whole repo refactors and migration sweeps without chunking away the cross-file reasoning. 3. Cost-efficient agentic runs, pointing the cheap model at the long, repetitive, token-hungry jobs. And 4, once the weights drop, self-hosted review for work that simply cannot leave a member's own infrastructure. Which brings us to how you actually get your hands on it. There are 3 ways in. Today, the hosted API, it's OpenAI compatible. It's been live since July 16th, and there's a no-code chat surface at Kimi.com. On pricing, cached input runs just 30 cents per million tokens, backed by a roughly 90% cache hit rate on coding workloads, and that rate is precisely what makes high-volume, agentic work economically sane. Then, on July 27th, the open waits. Remember that 1.4 terabytes? That's what brings a real frontier model within self-hosting reach, about a quarter of what the same model at FP16 would demand. It is still a large model though. Plan an 8 to 16 node cluster of 80 gig accelerators, ideally a supernode of 64 or more, served with an MoE-ware framework like VLLM, which already has Moonshot's Delta attention cache implementation contributed upstream. Self-hosted, and the sensitive Opus output you're reviewing never leaves your own building. So that's the dossier. K3 is not replacing Opus in my stack. Opus still authors the work. K3's job is to try to break what Opus builds before it ships, and because it fails differently, it catches the failures self-review will always miss. That's the whole bet, not a shinier flagship, but an independent adversary. Open, cheap, and orthogonal. It's now a standard step in Novel Cognition's build loop. And if the harder question, how your own work, your own authority, holds up under a model like this, is a problem you're sitting with too, that's exactly the work we do. I'm Guerin Green, and that was the K3 Dossier from Novel Cognition. The full research sweep, the architecture, the red team method, the benchmark board, and how to deploy it all lives at k3.novycob.novycom. Go read it and come argue with it.